Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi. I'm Dr. Karen Poole. So I study iguanodontian dinosaurs, and in my real job, although that's part of my real job, but I also teach anatomy human anatomy to medical students. So I'm kind of down that path in paleontology, heavy into anatomy these days.
Nice. Yeah. So Karen's been out here doing field work for longer than I have here in the Cedar Mountain Formation.
Yeah, it's been a few years since I've been out here, but I've been working. I come out occasionally and help out. And I think the first time I came to Doling's Bowl was like 2015 or so.
Early, wow.
And yeah, and I've worked with Jim and Don prior to that at what I still call in my head the Stykes Quarry, but what became
Utah Raptor Ridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if any of you saw the interview that I did with Jim, the tour of the Utah Raptor Mega Block at the end of May. That was from that same site. So,
yeah. I started working on the little iguanodontian that's sitting on top of that giant, massive Utah raptor.
Pretty cool.
Nice. Before it was
the one that may have drawn them into there, or is it from the dewatering feature itself, or is it from higher up stratigraphically?
It's from a little higher up.
Okay.
It's still in that weird dewatering. Like the sedimentology there was just wild. Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
And also, if you want to look at chat at any point too, you could pull it up on your phone, or
okay.
I don't know if you're. I saw you glancing over here, and I don't want to be like, no, look at chat.
No, it's fine. I was just kind of like, how does this whole how does this whole setup work? But
there's just a chat
fine.
right there.
I'll let you.
I'm just trying to this is what I do all day, is just monitoring chat and trying to respond to questions and stuff, but.
Yeah.
I got to do that interactivity thing.
Exactly.
That's the bread and butter of Twitch, as you're aware.
But yeah, welcome to our camp living room, kitchen.
Yeah, maybe we'll take you on a little tour later if you'd like that. But we've got actually a really nice setup here. So we're pretty lucky. This again feels like a vacation after doing all that field work in Wyoming. Having to drive out to all the different sites, and then we didn't have garages as nice as this or anything. This feels much more settled, which is really nice.
Almost like they've been doing this for 17 years. Is
yeah.
that right, Don?
Yeah.
Yeah, 17 years.
17 years.
Uncle Don knows what he's doing.
Kind of got it figured out.
Oh yeah, down to a system.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, let me ask you this, Karen. How early on did you know that you were interested in paleontology, and when did you realize you wanted to be a paleontologist?
Before I could pronounce the word properly, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's old camcorder footage of me saying I want to be a paleontologist. It's been an always thing for me.
Nice. How did that work early on? Is there any do you remember any paleontological media or anything like that had a big impact on you when you were a kid?
There must have been something early on.
But it was that early.
But it was that early that I don't really remember. My mom says it was a book called Dinosaur Time that we still have a copy of. It's
I think I know that one. Is it the really crocodile-y looking carnosaur on the front?
Kind of T-Rexy thing on the front. Yeah,
very skewedy along the back. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'd say sort of the more formative things, right? As I kind of hit that real peak dinosaur loving age when I was between kindergarten and second grade.
Yeah.
My family lived in Northern Virginia, so I would beg every weekend to go into the Smithsonian.
Oh man, yeah.
And sometimes we would get to go. So I went through there quite a bit. It was definitely a big impact. And then later we moved to Arizona. And as sort of a early teenager and all that, I started volunteering at our local museum there, which was then called the Mesa Southwest Museum and is now the Arizona Museum of Natural History. And so through those experiences, I started, kind of working in some prep lab stuff and doing some field work, and got going with the Zuniceratops project out there.
Awesome.
And that's actually where I first met Jim Kirkland.
Nice.
So I was probably 16 or 17 when I first met him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were hoping that Jim could be on stream today, but he had to go back to Salt Lake for something. So hopefully, with any luck, he'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe in time for a stream, or maybe not. We'll see. But we'll be seeing plenty of Papa Jim chat, so don't you worry. Yeah. Do you remember having any favorite dinosaurs when you were a kid? We're starting off early here with the questions.
No, that's fine. As a kid, I loved sauropods. Camarasaurus in particular. I don't really know why now.
It's got a cool skull. Yeah.
It's got a cool skull. Yeah. It's like but yeah, I loved all the all the sauropods, the really big, long-necked, long-tailed dinosaurs. And then I actually, as an undergrad, I did a little bit of work on a fairly small sauropod called Suawasia.
Yeah.
And I realized that it's kind of a pain if you've got to ask for help every time you want to flip one bone over.
They're such a pain in the butt to study.
Yeah, they really are.
And to store and to dig up and everything about sauropods.
And I still love them in the sort of I don't know, the general I can't think of the word I'm looking for. But yeah, I love the sort of general concept of a sauropod and how incredibly big they were and how ridiculous it is that they ate as much food as they did with a tiny head.
Yeah.
I love all of that about them. But I really moved away from actually studying them.
For sure, yeah.
And I love the smaller the fossils, the better now.
Is that saying that everybody loves sauropods until they have to actually work
until they have to actually work on them, and then some people love them enough that they still keep doing it. Or they relish the challenge of a bone taller than they are. But I kind of was like, oh, this actually is kind of a pain.
We got a good question from the chat.
Yeah.
For Dr. Karen, have you learned anything from dinosaur paleontology that has been enlightening about human anatomy? Or maybe vice versa, too?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely feed on each other. And I don't know about dinosaurs specifically, but just sort of, evolutionary biology generally. And, how... I think when you're thinking just about human anatomy, it's easy to think okay, so this is the sphenoid bone, this is what it is, right? And, this is what it looks like. And the sphenoid is this bone, kind of in the middle of your skull. I don't know why I picked that as an example.
It's a weird one, yeah.
It's a weird one. I don't know. It's the first thing that jumped to mind. But the thing is, we have all these connections, and the sphenoid bone in us is actually, a fusion of a whole bunch of different bones that exist in dinosaurs and lots of other animals. So I think seeing the patterns helps you understand our anatomy better, and vice versa, right? Yeah. And really doing the in-depth human anatomy that we just document so much better for medical purposes than any other animal, right? Having that real depth of knowledge, I think helps apply out to other animals. Yeah.
The kind of classic, comparative anatomy.
Exactly. And like I said, it's all sort of circular. Everything feeds on everything else.
And I'm sure it gives you a different kind of perspective, too, where it's a sphenoid looks like this in us, but that's not the essence of a sphenoid. It's here's what it looks like in all these other critters.
Exactly. And it's really fun. I have a few medical students who work with me on research projects, and so... and so I'm kind of walking them through, and I'm like, okay, so what the human skull is like. Okay, but now we're going to take each one of those bones, for the most part, and break it into, 4 other bones in a dinosaur, because, at least in skull stuff. Right?
Yeah, we've got all these things where, it's just one bone in humans or in mammals where...
Yeah, mammals fuse a lot of things together.
For sure.
And then my other favorite line is, if I'm teaching med students about the skull, and I'm like, okay, so the human skull has, 28 bones in it. But, just be glad we're not fish because, because I think I tried to count up one time for a lecture slide, right? So I could actually put the number, how many bones are in, a bowfin skull, India, right?
Yeah,
and I came up with 89. I might have missed some.
Jeez.
But, right?
Yeah.
I'm just be glad we're not fish. Then you'd have 89 bones to memorize, and then suddenly they feel better, right?
Yep.
So you gotta, be like, oh, see, humans aren't so bad.
Let's see. And Ivy Edge Table says, ask Dr. Poole if she's going to stop bringing a fortress's worth of bones home. I mean, we're bringing them to the repository in Salt Lake City, to the Natural History Museum of Utah. That's the whole reason that we're out here. But, yeah. I don't know. I think, do you ever get this, with your students think that you're collecting fossils
and,
for personal use or something like that, or?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, it's a valid question. But yeah, I actually don't really have. I have one little box of fossils for some sort of show and telly stuff, and that's really it. I don't have I'm not gonna take anything home from this quarry. unless I find like a cool shaped pebble that I just like.
Right.
Right?
Develop an emotional attachment to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But there's, I'm not going to take any of these fossils back. They're going, if anything we collect is going to be reposited, kind of first to the UGS and cleaned up, and eventually to the Utah Museum of Natural History.
Mm-hmm. That's really the thing with like professional paleontologists, is that we're not collecting for personal use. It's for science.
It's for science.
So like,
and
it's really nice not having to have that stuff at home too.
Yeah. And the thing is, here's the thing about science, right? It has to be reproducible.
Mm-hmm.
I can photograph and measure a bone and say that it has these features, right? But if nobody else is allowed to check on that, then that's not reproducible. So I can't just study a bone and then keep it in my living room. That's not really science. I know like
really
old.
Good point.
I know old school. That's kind of how they rolled.
Yeah.
But we're not doing that anymore.
Right.
We are not gentlemen scientists here. And so yeah. I'm not really doing science if I keep the fossil.
Right.
Like that's my view of it.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put that. Yeah. And let's see. King of the Nerds would like to know, a biology question, is there a correlation between predator and prey and gastrointestinal systems? Like horses and bunnies can't throw up, but owls and dogs and wolves can?
I don't know about throwing up specifically.
Yeah.
That's an interesting angle. But there are differences for sure. And, herbivores tend to have essentially a longer gut, so they have like more intestines and or more like stomach chambers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a foregut fermenter, like a cow.
Move this real quick.
Yeah.
Keep going. Sorry.
Those have, cows famously have like the 4 chambers in their stomach and all this stuff. So, and then like in contrast with modern stuff, horses are hindgut fermenters, so they've basically got more length of intestines, rather than having a lot of stomach space. But no matter how you slice it, they've got more guts than like any kind of cat or dog, any kind of canid or felid, right? If you're kind of going with the mammals.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think about like a panda maybe, where like that's a bear that's evolved to be herbivorous, and it tends to have a very, very large gut.
Yeah, they got big bellies. Yep.
Yeah, to help process all of that vegetative material that they consume. But yeah, good question. And it's, maybe you could talk a little bit about ornithischian dinosaurs versus saurischians and what's going on with their gut, like how we can infer any of that based on their hip shape and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So like ornithischian dinosaurs, it's kind of funny because they're called ornithischian, meaning that they have a bird-like ischium, which is one of the bones of the pelvis. But ironically, these are not the dinosaurs that birds evolved from. They evolved from saurischians.
The lizard-hipped dinosaurs.
Yeah. And I think it's just, there's some parallelisms going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's
kind of a coincidence.
Where that ischium sort of does the same thing in a couple different lineages.
Yeah.
But the main thing with ornithischian dinosaurs is then a lot of them, they also have so basically you would have kind of like your ilium up here, and then
I wish I had a diagram for this.
And then your pubis and your ischium. It's just sort of this like tri-radiate thing. But then that pubis bone is the attachment point for a lot of the abdominal muscles. So like if you think about someone with like 6-pack abs, right? That's what we call the rectus abdominis muscle, and it attaches at its lower point onto the pubis. And dinosaurs had a similar setup, right? So what we see in ornithischians is that pubis comes backwards. And that essentially creates, if their head's over there, right, that pubis sort of coming back like this creates more room for that gut along the length of the animal. Mm-hmm. And like, it could have still kind of also hung down and whatever, but like you're basically creating more length of the torso for this big gut. And ornithischians were all, as far as we know, herbivores. Like there's no real indication that any of them were not.
It'd be really cool to find that. I mean, there's some rumors of like pachycephalosaurs being partly omnivorous or something, but like I kind of wonder.
I don't know about that.
Maybe it's an ontogenetic thing too.
I think like heterodontosaurs, there's a good argument for them being omnivores, not full carnivores. Mm-hmm.
For the same thing for fabrosaurs, whatever those guys are now.
They're heterodontosaurs. Like it's the same. They're not really anything distinct. But and heterodontosaurs are like they're very close to that split between saurischians and ornithischians. So again, it kind of makes sense. Like
they hadn't really settled into the whole...
They hadn't fully settled into like
full herbivory thing,
maybe.
Yeah.
Or I think even if they were herbivores, they probably weren't like what we would call a folivore, right? They weren't exclusively eating leaves. They were maybe eating sort of like nuts and seeds and tubers that they dig up. I don't know, right?
Yeah, something might be a little easier to digest.
Yeah, some of that slightly easier, but they've got those big like caniniform teeth.
Yeah.
Right? And so they might have been kind of, I can envision them rooting or like cracking open nuts or something with those.
It's easy to imagine them almost like boars or something like that,
absolutely.
or warthogs with
They're
those tusks.
Very,
it's like...
very pig-like, honestly, in their dentition.
Yeah.
They're
I wonder if
they're
they
cool little beasts.
If they would have been burrowers too, in the same way that like thescelosaurs later on are.
Could be. I don't think there's any direct evidence for that, but sure, it's fun to think about them.
For sure.
Kind of as little burrowers.
Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, Crimson Carnotaurus. We did talk a little bit about that. Pachycephalosaurs may have eaten insects along plants. Maybe. I don't know. Mark Goodwin had an abstract about that at SVP a few years ago.
Yeah, but, I'm not convinced. Mostly, I haven't seen any really good Pachycephalosaur dentition.
Mm-hmm. And he's not published that specimen yet, I don't think.
And so maybe if I actually see some really some good...
And that could be unique to Pachycephalosaurus so far, too. Yeah. Like, it might be just a weird one-off kind of a deal.
Yeah.
Den's Pens 2K's got a good question.
All right.
So for the other types of digging up remains, there's a fair trade, or there's a lot of people raiding sites and selling stuff, like in the excavation of the pyramids. Is that sort of thing at all prevalent in paleontology?
Absolutely, yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So, we are fairly careful, I think, to be, not too specific in our exact, precise location.
We try and be a little bit cagey. We're near Green River, Utah right now. This little Chiron thing on the screen says. But,
and that is true.
Moab, I think is what it says. We're also near Green River. So
yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I think by the roads. Well, anyway, but yeah. So it is an issue for sure, and so it's always a worry when you leave a site for a season that kind of poachers are going to come across it and rip stuff out. And the main problem is someone who's doing this for commercial reasons. Sorry, I got some ants crawling on me. But, they want sort of just big, pretty looking bone. They don't necessarily care about the scientific context or keeping track of where anything came from or just keeping other stuff intact. So they'll, and sometimes they'll just rip out big chunks of bone to then kind of carve up and sell as little trinkets and things. They don't even necessarily want a complete bone. So, it's definitely a problem. Yeah.
There's been a lot of poaching in this part of Utah, especially. There was a big news article about that last fall, I think, came out. About this big, sting with the Bureau of Land Management and probably Department of Homeland Security as well. Where,
one person just had, poached... I
an
don't
insane
even know.
number of fossils.
Yeah, an insane amount, Yeah,
there were 70 tons of fossils seized. I think as they were bringing it into China, right? Jim was...
something about that was they were sending it to China to get carved into little figurines and then bringing it back and it's a whole industry there.
But that's different from Cast the Dreamer. No stream snipers so far, thankfully. That's when you're out streaming in real life and then somebody's watching the stream and they try and track you down.
Oh, and they track where you are.
Hi, and disrupt the stream.
We are unlikely to just randomly come across anyone.
Yeah, we're way out here in the middle of nowhere, which is it's got its perks for sure. Yeah. I wanted to ask you to maybe sell us on the idea of iguanodonts as important dinosaurs. Why are they cool? Why are they worth studying?
Yeah.
Why do you find them so interesting?
It's a fair question because
and how'd you get into them in the first place too?
They're sort of I'll start with how I got into them.
Yeah.
So honestly that's Jim Kirkland, right? So I was working at the Utah. I'll call it Utah Raptor Ridge because people know what that is. So I was working at the Utah Raptor Ridge before we even called it that. And we had this little kind of iguanodontian thing that we didn't really know what it was, which I did my master's thesis on. And we were out there, working with Jim, and he's, and he says, somebody's got to do an iguanodontian phylogeny. We don't know how these things are all related. And at the time, I was sort of I don't really want to do that.
So you didn't have prior interest in iguanodonts before
Not
that?
really.
Okay.
And then I kind of just ended up working on this thing that we got from the site as my master's thesis. And as I got into it, I was like, oh my God, we don't know anything about these animals, like in terms of phylogeny. I mean, we know a little bit about their biology, and obviously David Norman has done a ton of great work on all of the sort of European stuff. So Iguanodon itself was originally named from fossils in England, and is now actually based on the main
Belgium,
species. Iguanodon bernissartensis
it gets complicated,
is from Belgium. But basically England and Belgium.
Yeah.
Right? They're right across the channel. It's paleontologically it's fine, it's all the same.
Yeah.
So we know a fair amount about like kind of the biology of those animals and how they work. But there's this whole larger group of iguanodontian dinosaurs that encompasses, and let's see, they're not all iguanodontians in my phylogeny, but I think I had like 67 or 68 genera.
Wow.
In my phylogeny
that
I did
many?
yeah.
That's like twice as many as I would guess. That's impressive.
There's a lot, and they're known from every continent, every modern continent, right?
They're known from Antarctica.
We've got them from Antarctica.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right.
So they're known from like all modern continents. They start in the maybe middle, but definitely late Jurassic, all the way through the end of the Cretaceous, and so that's a span of like closing in on 100 million years. I mean, these animals were hugely successful. And a lot of people and while iguanodontians are iguanodon and things like it are these sort of, I don't know, I guess you'd call them boring dinosaurs. Like they're sort of nondescript, right?
They don't have the biggest horns or frills. I mean, they've got the thumb spikes.
They've got the thumb spikes, which is distinctive,
Yeah.
but not all of them have that even.
That's true.
Right? Like
Yeah.
dryosaurids are in this group, and they don't really have any of that going. They're these sort of like nondescript, small bipedal herbivores. And they're cute. And so here's one argument for iguanodontians, right? If we actually had the DNA resources and the technology of Jurassic Park, and we could clone dinosaurs, these are the ones that we should make. They're like this high, right? I'm talking like Dryosaurus and like,
sure.
and also sort of like the Speedos, right? These
small-bodied, early diverging ornithischians. Yeah.
So these
used to be called hypsilophodonts.
Yeah. But there's a sort of whole group that some are inside and some are outside of Iguanodontia itself, but they're these like small bipedal herbivorous animals, right?
Yeah.
Like this big. Like, they've got good beaks. They could maybe be a little bit nippy if they wanted to be, but, like, they're not going to kill anyone.
Yeah. Funny enough, that's my standard answer. Anytime somebody asks me, like, what would be a good dinosaur to have as a pet? Good non-avian dinosaur, I usually say Coulindodromeus.
Yeah.
Because it's got all those features you were just mentioning, plus it's fuzzy.
It's fuzzy. Yeah, exactly.
So, this is a nice little image. I'm just going to show them.
Yeah, awesome.
So silhouettes of different iguanodontians like this. This is the basic, kind of group. This gives you some sense for what we're talking about here, I hope.
And these are, I feel like a lot of people, this is maybe a little bit more like hadrosaurs, which are within the group of iguanodontians. I think yesterday I equated it to like, dolphins are, all dolphins are whales. They're a group within whales.
They're part of Cetacea, like
right?
that.
So same thing, right? Hadrosaurs are a group within Iguanodontia. But people call them like the cows of the Cretaceous, right?
Right, yeah.
In sort of a derogatory way. But cows are great, guys. And
they're a successful group.
They're a successful group,
yeah.
And they're really interesting. And there's a lot of interesting things about their biology. So, and basically, it's one of those things that, like, once I started like looking at this problem of how are all of these animals related to each other, there wasn't really a lot of work on that at that point.
Yeah.
There was some, but it definitely needed to be more fleshed out. And so that's what I decided to do for my PhD dissertation. I just wanted to like go in and figure out how are all these things related to each other, because until we understand that, we can't really start asking questions about how
they evolved.
They evolved, right?
Yeah.
We sort of need to know what the baseline pattern is before we can start answering questions about the patterns within evolution and what was happening at what time and all of that.
Yeah. We had a question here. The chart had Uranosaurus. I thought they were reclassified as hadrosaurs. This kind of feeds into that.
No. Uranosaurus is definitely outside of hadrosaurs. And what you might have seen is sometimes they group within this larger group we call hadrosauroids. All right, so you've got like hadrosaurids up here, right? And then like kind of stepping out into a slightly larger group, you would have hadrosauroids. And sometimes Uranosaurus gets up into hadrosauroids, but actually if you get enough taxa into the tree, then really it groups more down with what I would call sort of like just not, well, the best term for it is non-hadrosauroid iguanodontians, which is a bit of a mouthful, but we'll just say like, yeah, the non-duckbill dinosaur iguanodontians, like, which is really the meat of what I study. There's a lot of people working on hadrosaurs. That's like a busy field, and I'm like, you all have fun up there. I'm figuring out where... Enjoy your duckbills. I'm figuring out kind of how they got to that point, and how, what was the setup, right? What was the evolutionary pattern for them to get to that point? And iguanodontians are interesting in their own right. And I also like to point this out. It's not a linear thing, right? It's not like we have iguanodontians in the early Cretaceous and then they all become hadrosaurs and duckbill dinosaurs. There are other lineages.
There's like relic groups, or Rhabdodontians, I guess.
Well, Rhabdodontians, right? So Rhabdodon and Zalmoxes was featured in
Prehistoric Planet,
which is great for me because now people know what Zalmoxes is, and I can use this example. But Zalmoxes is also an iguanodontian, and so you can kind of follow part of the tree, and there's this trend towards really like more and more teeth and bigger jaws and like these giant dinosaurs, which are the hadrosaurs. Most of them are quite large. But there's this other group of iguanodontians hanging out in the underbrush doing their thing, being Zalmoxes. And their teeth sort of take a whole different trajectory where they have actually really big teeth, like really wide teeth in their jaws and not that many of them. And hadrosaurs do the exact opposite. They have like super narrow teeth, closely packed, and like 40 of them. In like just like across the lower jaw. So they take these very different pathways, and so there's these different groups evolving in parallel, and evolution is not, it's a bush and it's radiating outward. It's not like this sort of stepwise progression, even though any given path you could follow this sort of stepwise
but there's
progression.
So many different paths,
there's all these different paths,
and
that's so that's kind of the cool thing, and you can follow these different pathways through.
And speaking of those kinds of pathways like that, how can the study of iguanodontians help you understand kind of the history of life on Earth while these animals are alive? Do they track with the evolution of flowering plants? Is there a way to test that?
Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely a hypothesis that's out there. Is that there's this sort of coevolution and give and take between dinosaur dentition and flowering plants.
Because these critters kind of evolve at the same time. You get iguanodontians really becoming successful, taking off the same time that flowering plants develop. Yeah,
and it's one of those things. Yeah, I kick around and I think about it.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
how do you test that?
How do we
thing,
actually
test
this?
Yeah.
I mean, like, look, there are some phylogenetic tests you could do. You could basically look at, are they, is there sort of a, like, are you seeing the diversifications of those groups at the same time? And we need to have pretty good evidence and pretty well constrained trees. So like a really good idea of how that evolution happened and like have that like really down. You would need that for both groups to really see if that timing is the same. And even then it could be coincidental. It could be, not really that one's driving the other, but just iguanodontians would have been just as happy eating angiosperms as they would have eating gymnosperms, right? Or these non-flowering plants, so things like pine trees and cycads,
ferns and stuff like that.
Maybe they would have been just as successful with that. So it's hard to really pin it down. It's definitely a fun thing to think about.
Because it really is like a revolution that's going on in terms of plant biotas. Today the majority of plants, like if we're to look out across this landscape right now, all of these are going to be flowering plants. I think we might get some PJ up there, some pine juniper, which is a conifer, but like everything else out here is a flowering plant. Everything with flowers, grass is a flowering plant. Most things that produce fruit are flowering plants nowadays. So it's like
basically picture anything other than a pine tree or a fern. and it's a flowering plant. You know, even though you might not picture it with flowers, it's still going to fall in that group called angiosperms, which are the flowering plants.
It's like 90% of plant species today, or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
And they didn't exist prior to iguanodonts. So it's like both of these groups.
Yeah.
Iguanodonts probably predate them by a little bit.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Probably, I mean, angiosperms might have existed, like, at this point, with these things we're studying here in the earliest Cretaceous.
But they're not widespread
They weren't
yet.
common.
Yeah.
And so yeah, these particular animals that we're digging up in this quarry, they were probably eating things like, pine needles and ferns.
Tree ferns,
Tree ferns.
All that Tempskia that we've been finding in the quarry.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe some cycad kind of things, but like that's what they had to eat. It was tough vegetation. I don't know if you've ever tried chewing on pine needles, but I have not. But I don't want to.
I wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. If anyone's done it, you can let me know how that experience was.
Yeah.
I'll be interested to know without having to do it myself.
If you want to feel like an iguanodont would have felt,
Yeah.
Except much clumsier, I'm sure. They had teeth that were evolved for that purpose.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they are prodigious chewers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the earliest iguanodont that we have so far? Did they go back into the Middle Jurassic or earlier? I guess it goes into like what is an iguanodont.
Yeah. So let's see. I'm trying to think. Typically, like in my tree, what I was finding, the earliest like iguanodontian were things like Gasparinisaura and Anavicetia from South America, and I'm trying to remember how old those are. I'm pretty sure they're Cretaceous.
Gasparinisaura, I think, is like Cenomanian, isn't it?
Yeah.
I want to say it's coeval with like Giganotosaurus.
So yeah, I think really our in terms of time, I think our earliest iguanodontians that we know of for sure are late Jurassic. It's things like Camptosaurus.
Sure.
And
Calobosaurus, maybe.
And Dryosaurus.
Okay, yeah.
Because Dryosaurus is an iguanodontian as well.
Yeah. That was my favorite dinosaur as a kid for a while.
So maybe if we find some that are... Dryosaurus is your favorite dinosaur? That's amazing. Yeah. I love that. Like, no one's ever said that before, and I love it.
Yeah, that's why I'm a little bit proud of that.
Yeah.
There was like a few years where it's like Dryosaurus, all-time favorite dinosaur, you know?
Oh my god, that's amazing.
I think it was because of its appearance in When Dinosaurs Roamed America.
Okay,
That documentary where, there was like a mother Dryosaurus with two young, and the young just keep getting eaten by the Ceratosaurus, and
as they do in dinosaur shows. I study the food.
Ornithopods are just always...
In museum displays, there's like this triumphant theropod, like, and then the skeleton of the thing I study is like lying on the ground, and I'm like, I don't even get to see it.
Or like poor Tenontosaurus is just always
Tenontosaurus is always
torn
being
asunder
eaten
by
Deinonychus.
Yeah.
Always. And Tenontosaurus is great too.
What's up with the huge long tail on Tenontosaurus? Is there any functional hypothesis for why it had such a ridiculously long tail?
Not really a functional hypothesis that I'm aware of, but yeah, and like there's others that also have like really long tails. Like Gasparinisaur's tail is pretty long. Leolinosaura, which is this little one from Australia. Like its tail is stupidly long. And just for reference for people out there, if we're thinking in terms of number of vertebrae in the tail, these are the sorts of numbers that float around in my head. Like, these things have like over 50 individual vertebrae in their tails. They are so long.
Compare that to, what's the human coccyx? Is how many vertebrae in there?
It's like 3 or 4, I think, fused together into this one little nub. So
50 vertebrae, that's nuts. Jeez, 50 caudals.
50 caudals.
What are they doing with that?
I don't know.
That's crazy. Well, it's like with that Eryctodromius paper that just came out. Like, they've got all these ossified tendons on their tails. So these are animals that are spending at least part of their lives in burrows. And they've got this huge, long, really stiff tail. What's going on with that?
What are you doing with that in a burrow, dude?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So there's a hypothesis now that the burrows had multiple entrances and exits, so they wouldn't have to turn around in the burrow.
Because how would you?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, unless the burrow were, like, super wide somewhere.
Which,
and, like, that could be.
It could be.
I mean, it could be you, like, burrow in, and then you build sort of a big little, like, turnaround living room area. And so you can get back out, but...
You'd think a long, stiff tail would be a disadvantage if you're, like, a burrowing animal that's got to turn around in there. So
You would think,
there's so much we don't understand about these animals.
Yeah, exactly. And like actually how they lived is, you know, we can conjecture about it a little bit, but we're definitely missing stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Do you want to talk a little bit about Ikuyu? Ayuku.
Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
South African dryosaur that you were involved with, and one of the authors on the paper. What was that like?
So that was a project I kind of got brought in on when I was working on my PhD. So I'm like working on iguanodon phylogeny, and
then you get a call saying you're an iguanodon expert.
This was a project my PhD advisor was already working on.
Okay.
And she's like, hey, we've got these like baby dinosaurs from South Africa that I've been working on, and you know we're gonna write up a paper and name it, but it's all juvenile specimens. And when I say juvenile, I mean baby. I wish I had like pictures on me that I could have sent you.
I can find some, yeah.
I don't know if you'll find the pictures I want, but
I see what you mean.
But like there are, like I have a picture in the PowerPoint that I do it's not actually my thumbnail. I think it's maybe Kathy's, but we have literally an entire maxilla sitting across.
That's the big tooth-bearing bone up here in the upper jaw.
So it's the upper jaw bone, basically. just sitting on a thumbnail, and it's not even quite as long, as wide as like the thumbnail is. So these were, and these probably got to be decent sized animals. We're not sure how big. Like probably, in the phylogeny it comes out next to Dryosaurus and Dicelotosaurus. So you can look up what those look like. It was probably similar size-ish. I mean, we don't know for sure.
Because you've only got juvenile specimens.
But we only have juvenile specimens. And so that was the real trick, is then how do we determine where these animals go evolutionarily? How they're related to everything else? Because a lot of the things that we use to determine how things are related to each other phylogenetically, a lot of those things overlap with things that change through time. So I think the easiest thing to relate to is like number of teeth in the jaw. That's a really useful character. I've already kind of referenced it. I was talking about the difference between like the rhabdodontids and the hadrosaurs, right? Where hadrosaurs have like all these really narrow teeth in their jaw, and like I said, seriously, like 40 teeth, you know, within like one maxilla, right? Whereas rhabdodon will have like something like 12. Okay, so there's a huge difference there. So I don't want to just ignore that and not use that phylogenetically, but also babies have fewer teeth in their jaws. The same is still true for humans, all right? Anyone who has kids or has sort of tracked that knows that, like, you know, there's fewer baby teeth that fall out than what we get in eventually. And so even for humans, this is something that changes. And for dinosaurs, you know, and again, with these Ayuku specimens, I think some of them have like 5 teeth in the maxilla. Like, it's like not even on the scale of what I'm measuring.
So how many would they have as adults?
And so the basic answer to this is that in the phylogeny, I coded that as a question mark. Right? That we don't actually know.
And good on you for doing that, because not every researcher would do that.
No.
Someone would say, like, oh, look at this new tiny ornithopod.
Look at this new tiny ornithopod. It has all these new, unique features that are
so
totally
primitive in the phylogeny,
and
so that's super basal.
But we're like, we know these are babies, guys. Like, this is not the adult character. And that's been done before, right? So I don't want to claim credit for like, oh my god, I came up with this, like, we don't know what it is in an adult, so we'll code it as a question mark, all right? You know, this is something that a lot of researchers have done in the past. I think the thing that I did that was somewhat unique was I took that a little bit further and then tried to go through the entire phylogeny, find every species that I could where we do have both like juvenile and adult specimens, and I coded them separately in the phylogeny. So I would have like the adult version and the juvenile version. And so then I could play around with it and see if actually using those question marks made a difference or not. Right? And to basically test out whether the phylogeny was robust enough to like be able to sort of like take out the adult, put the juvenile in instead. Can we still recover it at the same point in the tree?
Sure.
And in short, the answer to that was yes. So I'm actually reasonably confident in saying that Ayuku is a dryasaurid. It's very closely related to Dryosaurus and Dicelotosaurus. And that actually makes sense because Dicelotosaurus is known from the late Jurassic of East Africa. So now we have Ayuku, which is the early Cretaceous now. So it's a little bit later in time and a little further south within Africa. But, you know, that close relationship kind of makes sense. And no matter what we did, no matter how we kind of manipulated the data, those always grouped together. So, like, I'm pretty confident that it's not just our model, it is actually the data. Right? That is pointing to that being the relationship. So anyway, so Kathy basically brought me on and said, okay, we're going to describe this thing. You're working on iguanodontian phylogeny. You need to figure out how to put these juvenile specimens into a tree. So that became a chapter in my dissertation. Is like, how do we do that? And so, like I said, I was using a technique that other people had used before, but I just really drew it out. And what I did was, if you all are familiar with the concept of a phylogenetic bracket.
We do talk about the EPB a fair bit on this channel,
And so here it's not an EPB, right? Because I don't have any extant animals.
Well, it still is. It's an extinct phylogenetic bracket.
Yeah, that's true. There we go. So I've just got a different E. But so in this case, basically what I'm looking at is, here's sort of my target area with Ayuku. I've got all these different things branching out, right? And so I'm kind of trying to look on either side of it evolutionarily, like, testing out different lineages within this group and looking across that, and also in all those adult and juvenile pairs, then I looked across all of those and I said, okay, any character that changes between one of those juvenile adult pairs, that's an ontogenetically sensitive character. I'm coding that as a question mark in Ayuku.
Nice.
And so it was both a way of determining which characters I needed to be careful with, and also then a way of testing in the end, like whether this whole thing could work or not.
That's really cool. Yeah, because so often phylogenies just get really messed up because people are just coding juvenile animals in, and they come out super primitive. And,
and it's hard to know sometimes, like when you've got this sort, and I made a distinction here because a lot of specimens that we have in paleontology are not like what we would say full adults.
Yeah.
They're probably like sort of in
especially with dinosaurs.
Yeah. They're probably in this realm that we call subadults. So they're like, I don't know, I guess think like teenagers. Like they've got most of their adult features, but they're maybe not quite like all the way there. And so I was really looking at like juvenile. I'm like, these are babies. All right. And so I wasn't really distinguishing like subadult versus adult. And there you could even get into some deeper weeds doing that. But I was just like, all right, babies over here, and then like everything else.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just dealing with that. But yeah, that it's tricky sometimes to notice if you're working on something that is subadult versus adult.
Yeah. For sure.
Unless you're slicing up the bones and looking at the histology.
Which is what I'm always advocating for. It's a common refrain on this channel.
And I think that has become more common now, and I think more people are coming around to the idea that, like, it's not that big a deal to slice up a bone or two.
Yeah.
And just
glue
check.
is cheap,
Yeah, exactly. But you also have to have the know-how or contact someone who does to actually slice those bones up and the equipment, right? Just to slice them up and grind them down and make a slide and be able to do all that. That's not something I've ever done. I don't really have that expertise.
I'd love to learn.
It'd be kind of cool, but also, I feel weird as someone who, I feel like I'm like on this train where I'm like studying like ontogeny and phylogeny and sort of like how animals develop through their, but I don't actually do histology. I don't actually do those slices on the bone. So sometimes I'm like, should I learn to do that?
I think about that all the time. Like, do I need to apprentice myself to Holly Woodward or something?
But still, I definitely advocate for like figuring out like if your animal is an adult or not, and being aware of that. It's things are still useful even if they're not an adult, but you just need to know.
Yeah. We've probably got a drink for you coming from town. I'm getting thirsty. Are you getting thirsty at all? Can I grab you anything?
Yeah. If Ethan brought my sodas, then
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, I need to grab my water bottle too, but I'm glad you've got one right there. We were talking a little bit about
my second least favorite field drink, tepid water.
Oh, you're not decal, but etching on there.
Oh yeah.
Some people in chat will really appreciate that, I think. Yeah. We've looked at that graphic many, many times. Graphic. What am I saying?
Sketch. I don't know.
It's from old Chucky D.
But yeah, shout out to my brother-in-law for putting that on the water bottle for me.
Yeah. Yeah, while I go talk to them for a minute, Could you maybe explain in your best professorial tone what a cladogram is? What is cladistics?
Okay. Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
this is not an easy one necessarily.
Cladistics was invented by Willy Hennig.
I'll be right back. Yeah.
All right. So basically, what cladistics is a way of figuring out evolutionary relationships between things, and so what we're trying to do essentially is code a bunch of what we call characters, and every character has multiple character states. A lot of times, there's only 2 states, and so in this big data matrix, you would code them as 0 and 1. And so, a character state could be something like, the premaxilla, this bone right in the front of the mouth. Premaxilla either has teeth or doesn't have teeth. Okay?
Nice binary character state.
Nice binary character state, very easy. So some things are like that. Some things are more like a ratio, I'll stick with teeth here and say, sort of like the height of the tooth versus the width of the tooth, right? And if it's sort of over a certain range, we would code it as a 1. If it's below that, we would code it as a 0. It can be more complicated than that. You can have multiple states, or this thing called continuous characters, which I don't even mess with. It's but yeah, mostly basically what we're doing is we're taking all the anatomy that we can see, and we're sort of reducing it into a big table of mostly 0s and 1s. Sometimes we might have some 2s and 3s thrown in there. And a whole lot of question marks, because a question mark indicates, we don't know. Because either we're missing that bone entirely in that animal, or whatever. So we've got, basically, imagine a big table, and we've got, a list of species down the side, and then we've got a whole bunch of different characters running across. And for reference for how big these can be, my big iguanodontian phylogeny that I published, I said I think it was 68 species, right? So there's 68 rows down this way, and 323 characters.
Wow.
All right, so that's a lot of cells to fill in. That's why it was a whole dissertation. So we kind of fill in all these 0s and 1s, and at that point we then put that matrix into various algorithms. And with cladistics specifically, sort of old school cladistics, the algorithm that we're using really is what we call parsimony. So parsimony assumes we want to find the fewest number of steps. So if we start off with this sort of ancestral state where we'll just say everything is 0. That's not how it works, but for argument's sake, we'll say, we start off with everything being 0 in what we think is the sort of, and what we'll call the outgroup. All right. So the thing we kind of throw it in to this analysis as something that's not really inside our group, but we're using it as, we think it's like
anchor or something.
Yeah, it's like an anchor point, right? We think it's outside the group and maybe sort of closely related, and then basically any change from that point counts as a step. And we want to keep the number of steps as small as we can as we create this sort of branched tree. And so at every sort of branching point on the tree, as we've got sort of our root, and then it goes, sorry, I'm trying to do this with my fingers, but I can't. But we have this sort of root point, and it goes up and it branches, right? And then it branches again, and then it branches again.
I've got some phylogeny visual aids. I should have brought them from the quarry.
And at each of those branch points, you're going to have some characters that change. And so we're trying to just keep that number to a minimum. That's parsimony. And so basically you take this big matrix and you run it through some algorithms that are going to find those trees with the fewest number of steps. And usually it finds multiple trees. So different configurations that each have the same amount of steps. And so then you kind of have to look at what are the similarities in those trees, and we call that a consensus tree. So you kind of put them all together and say, okay, well, what's true in all the trees?
Right.
And that's what we'll go with. And then there's other newer algorithms or ways of thinking about this that people use that just
Bayesian methods and
different
stuff like
statistical
that,
models. So there's maximum likelihood methods and there's Bayesian methods. And people argue over which is better and all of this stuff. And my general point of view is that all of these are models.
Yeah.
All right. So we have data. The data is our matrix, right? And we can apply different models to that, and that's good. right? And if you apply a couple of different models to the data and they find the same thing, that's great. That's because, like I said, that's telling me then that information is really being pulled from the data. It's not some artifact from the model itself. And so that's my viewpoint of it, is like use multiple models and see what's the same about them and what's different.
You should get a consensus if there's some like underlying truth there. Then,
exactly. If there's some underlying thing about the data that's really there, it's going to come through no matter what the model is. But if you only use one model, you don't know what that is. Right. So use multiple models, test it out different ways. Yeah. And if there's parts of the tree that are showing up the same, like these things are always related to each other no matter how I test it, great. They're probably related. And then if you have other areas where there's like big disagreements, okay, you need to go back and reassess what's happening there. Maybe you need to take a look at that, kind of that area of the data matrix, and maybe you made a mistake. There's a lot of cells. Or? I have no doubt there are mistakes in my data matrix. Yeah. Like there's just no way. There's no way I was that perfect. And so
that's why you do a lot.
Exactly. But take a second look at some areas, recode some things, maybe sometimes adding a new species, like when you find that, like that can change everything. So that's the kinds of things that we play around with, even once you have this big matrix that you can then sort of tinker with. That's the kind of things we do. Does that work as an explanation for
some people in chat were like kind of confused about some of these things and like, oh, does that data turn into a table? Like the data in the table, how does it become a tree? And you explain that really well.
Basically, we run it through different algorithms using different models, and that pops out trees. and you should know a little, if you're doing it, you should know a little more about it. But like, I don't want to get into trying to explain this.
That's a really nice kind of primer there, for sure. Yeah. And so you've done this on iguanodontians primarily.
Yes.
In this whole process, coding all these characters and everything, are there any iguanodontians that you find that you dislike more or like more? Have you grown fond of any particular taxa? Any genera or species?
I am really fascinated by Lurdusaurus.
Yeah, from North Africa, right?
Yeah.
From Morocco?
From Niger.
Niger, okay.
Yeah, it's from Niger. And it was found by these like French expeditions to Niger. So it's kept in Paris because, colonialism and paleontology, guys. Sorry.
Yeah. We're working on it.
Yeah, we are. But Lurdusaurus, which is just sort of like awkward and fun to say at the same time. And actually, I have a funny story about that for you. I was visiting MOR one time, and I don't know why I was talking about Lurdusaurus at that point, but I was talking to John Scannella about Lurdusaurus, and he misheard me, and he heard it as Murdersaurus. And so now John Scannella and I have this like long-running joke about Murdersaurus.
Murdersaurus, yeah.
Yeah. And now every time I see him, he asks me about how Murdersaurus is doing. So anyway, but Lurdusaurus is an iguanodontian, but it is like so chonky, guys. I cannot describe to you how incredibly chonky and beefy this guy is. Like its forearm bones are like the ulna is like this big around and like this long. It's just so incredibly, and it's got a really big thumb spike, so it's a lot like Iguanodon, but like even just like bigger armed. Like this guy was.
Picture right here.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah,
pretty decent.
Yeah, that's decent.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure it quite encapsulates how chunky it is.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of like a hippo or something, which I think that's a.
That's sort of a hypothesis because it also has like really like big like the arc of the ribs is like really wide, so it would have been like really just like barrel chested. Yeah, it's like barrel chested with like this guy looked like a bodybuilder. Like it was like barrel chested with like really beefy arms. Right, it's got this huge process on the radius for the attachment of the biceps muscles. So like it would have had huge biceps. All right, like this guy was just like he did not skip arm day at the gym. Probably not leg day either, but. But yeah, so and I don't know what it was doing, but I just like every time I look at those fossils, it brings me joy because they're so ridiculous.
It's such a weird animal.
It's such a weird animal, and we don't have a lot of it.
Right.
But we have sort of the arms and some of the ribs and vertebrae and like a little bit of the back of the skull. Huh. I think that's about it. I mean, that's off the top of my head. I probably missed something, but. But yeah.
There's a hypothesis that maybe it did have a lifestyle, kind of like a hippo, where it's just hanging out in the water most of the time. And
yeah, and like, with like, and the bones are pretty like dense.
Yeah, there's like some pachystosis going on.
A little
there,
bit,
right?
at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more just the mineralization. And again, this is one somebody should slice up and
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So any aspiring paleohistologists in like France or nearby, maybe take a look.
Neat.
Yeah, see if the Natural History Museum in Paris will let you slice those up. It's a holotype specimen. It's the only one we have. So good luck with that. But
oh boy,
it would be great. It would be great if somebody did that.
So now on the other side of that, maybe throwing some shade here, are there any iguanodontians that you find you dislike after working on this entire group? Are there any that you just kind of roll your eyes at or, sigh?
Sorry, I'm trying to like
it's okay if you don't.
A politic answer here. Oh no, there's so many. I'll just say this.
Yeah.
Just all the ones named on like really scrappy, like incomplete material, and I'm just like,
how does this? A lot of stuff from Europe, I presume.
No, not always. No. There's some Cedar Mountain Formation stuff. Yeah, that's like based on almost not. It's based on like an ilium and a tibia, and I'm just like, guys, it's not diagnostic. I just don't know what to do with this thing. But but now it's in the literature. It's in the literature.
It's a name.
It's a genus name. I mean, I could write up a bunch of papers like saying this isn't a valid taxon and just sink it, but there's no real point. I just sort of ignore them and let them drift away, I guess. I mean, I actually have like an appendix to my dissertation and my big iguanodontian phylogeny paper that's like, here's a bunch of things that I did not include and here's why.
Ooh.
So I guess if you want to know the shade, go look up the appendix.
Okay.
So look up. It's in the big iguanodontian phylogeny is called Phylogeny of Iguanodontian Dinosaurs in Paleontologia Electronica. It's an open access paper. Anyone can go find it if they want.
Yeah.
Check out the appendices and you'll find. And honestly, it's not even that I hate all the things in the appendices. Some of them are probably like genuinely distinct species, but like they're just so scrappy I couldn't really do anything with them.
Yeah.
So I want to backtrack a little bit and say I don't like necessarily hate all of those.
No, of course not. No. It's just like maybe it doesn't warrant having a new genus or species name.
Yeah, that like you could have described the material and like not named it.
Yeah. That's always a really honestly a very classy move when someone does it.
I get why people want to name it. So because it's also annoying to just refer to things as like that unnamed iguanodontian maxilla from the such and such formation
or whatever. Yeah.
So I get the rationale for giving it a name, but also then I feel compelled to like put it in the phylogeny and I can't because there's just not enough data and it bounces around and it ruins everything. So then I have to pull it out. Yeah. Because there's literally a phenomenon for those of you unfamiliar with cladistics called rogue taxa. All right, so these are species that are so incomplete or so weird sometimes that like they don't fit in the tree in any one point. And so when you're running the analysis and you're finding all these different trees, it'll basically be found at like every single point. And then when you try and find that consensus tree, because of that one taxon roaming around everywhere, the consensus tree is like meaningless. Like it's literally just every species you have radiating from one point.
So it just ruins your whole analysis.
It ruins the whole analysis.
It's a poison pill.
Exactly. And so you have to remove them to get any data, and that's called a rogue taxon. And so and there are many rogue taxa in probably every group that you work on, right? Yeah. So I know like the iguanodontian ones, but
we had a question. How long did that thesis take to work on?
So I mean, the research itself, I guess a little less, but I was doing my PhD for 6 years. So yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And I think maybe that's another important point to make because I get this question a lot. Like, who determines whether something's a new species, or like if a taxon gets sunk or whatever, like, you know, where do you hold the vote for this kind of thing? I think people think that it's kind of like in astronomy, like with that group of astronomers that voted on whether or not to consider Pluto a planet anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what's your equivalent thing in paleontology? And the answer is, we don't have one.
Yeah, I mean, there are rules about naming a species. So you have to sort of follow the rules set out by this body called the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature.
The ICZN.
The ICZN.
Yeah.
And there's a separate one, like, for botany and all of that stuff. And, you know, but these are sort of very basic guidelines. Like, like, you can't name something that, you know, you can't use a name that already exists, right? And, you know, and there's...
Can't name something after yourself.
Yeah, you don't
name
it
all the time.
Yeah. And so there's these sort of specifications about how you do it, but basically as long as you follow those rules, you can just name something. And you have to have, like, a diagnosis, right? You have to list out what's unique about this as compared to other things. But, like, you can list those things, then I can look at that list and say, I don't think that's actually that unique.
Yeah.
And so there can be some argument about it. And, you know, to sink a taxon, basically you just, all you would have to really do is publish a paper that says, like, I don't think that's a valid taxon, and here's why. Like, you need to make your argument. And then it's sort of up to the scientific community as a whole to just, whether they accept that or not. There's no one takes a vote. You know, it's just, and some taxon names are valid taxon names that exist out there somewhere that no one has ever actually sunk, but nobody uses them.
Yep. Yeah.
And they just sort of, like, drift away.
They just fade into obscurity over time. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's the major, I guess, measure of, like, whether or not your work is good is, like, do other people use it? You know?
Yeah.
Do other researchers find it useful in the field? And, yeah. I should say in the discipline, because, like, we've got this problem in paleontology where we've got fieldwork, too.
Oh, yeah, so saying the field is
within the discipline of paleontology, within this scientific endeavor that we have.
Yeah.
But yeah. Good question from Salamander here. When pursuing your master's, is there a limited number of PhDs available at a time? I heard people say there is a PhD candidate, and it makes me wonder if people have to compete for it. So,
I mean, in a way, there is a limit, but it's not like some set number somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's like a number of slots available, sort of, at, like, under certain programs.
Yeah, and I will say, you know, if you're in that process and applying for a PhD program, you know, understand that sometimes an advisor might actually want to work with you. You've talked to them, you have a cool project in mind, or they just think that you'll be a good fit in their lab, but, like, they're only going to take 5 new grad students in the department that year, and they got one last year, so they don't get one this year. You know, so sometimes there's some sort of politics behind it, and it's not about you. So don't feel bad when you get those rejections. Like, they're going to happen, right? I got rejected from a lot of schools, guys. It's fine.
Yeah.
But do, because of that, do hedge your bets, right? And apply to multiple programs. Don't just think, oh, this one's a sure thing, because this PI, this principal investigator, like, you know, I have a relationship with them. I think they know what I do, and they're going to let me in. They might not be able to.
Yeah.
So even if you've done all that kind of back work of, like, talking to people and you know, creating relationships with people,
could be that school just doesn't have room at that
point. So I just want to kind of put that out there.
Yeah.
For people in this process, and then so a PhD candidate is actually something that sort of happens along the way. So within graduate school, usually the first year, probably like 2 years, typically in a PhD program, you are taking courses. You're probably also TAing for some classes or working as a research assistant, and that's how you actually get paid. Also a thing I like to share that people don't necessarily know.
Yeah.
You don't get paid like a luxurious amount, but
enough to live on, hopefully.
Yeah, but usually as a graduate student, you get a tuition waiver and you get paid a stipend.
That's if they have funding. Sometimes
not.
You got to pay tuition for that too,
sometimes
and it's just
not.
That's really lousy. Sometimes it happens.
Yeah, I would steer people away from that. I would try and find a program
unless you're independently wealthy or something.
Yeah.
In which case, I hope you're watching. Hope you're thinking about subscribing. Yeah.
But you know. But if this is something you're interested in doing, you know, recognize that there is actually a real chance you can be not going into debt, but actually earning some money as a grad student. And so you do all that. You spend your first couple years taking classes and working. And then what happens is you take your comprehensive exams, which is, it varies from school to school. I can share my experience, which was basically, it was like about an 8-hour written exam with like open-ended essay-style questions. That was just like, describe the evolution of pharyngeal arches in vertebrates. Like and then like, explain like the phylogeny of the Dinosauria. Just like sketch it out. Just the whole thing. All right. So it's like these broad, open-ended questions like this, and then a week later we have then an oral exam where they look at your answers from the written exam and follow up on like things you might have missed or gotten wrong, or maybe they pull out some old exams from classes that you took, and they're like, well, you didn't answer this question very well. I'm going to ask you about this again and see if you really get it now. So it's that kind of thing. It's a little scary, but it's not awful. And at that point, when you pass those, then you advance to candidacy, and now you are a PhD candidate. So when you're seeing that was like my very long-winded way of getting to the point that once
you've passed the test,
when you see someone is a PhD candidate, it means that they've passed that initial set of exams, and now they're really moving into the part of their PhD where they are just doing research and working on their dissertation. Yeah. So they're a PhD candidate now.
And for anybody like unfamiliar with the whole idea of a dissertation, it's like, here's some original research that you're producing. No one else has ever done this. You're on the cutting edge of this. You are
becoming
discipline.
The expert in this area.
Yeah. So, like, for that one subject, that very narrow thing that you pick, you should be the person on the planet with the most expertise on that. Usually, it's some sort of project that you've pursued. Maybe you're working on a specimen that you've collected. Maybe you've got some new method that you've devised, but it's something brand new. So it is kind of a big deal when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
And sometimes candidacy involves having to also have like basically given a synopsis of like what you plan to do for your research, right? And kind of given a presentation on that. Like sometimes that's involved with candidacy as well. Basically, you have to lay out like, hey, here is what my dissertation is going to be. This is my plan. Yeah. And you'll have not just an advisor, but a whole committee who will kind of have to sign off on that and say, yeah, that could work, and that's a good project.
Yeah. We had a question here, too. But the mentor has to know this field, too, right? So I guess the implied question is, like, so how would you be the world expert on it if you're...
Yeah, but your mentor probably works on something related to what you do, but maybe not that specific thing, or even if it is very, very similar, like, honestly, I'm already feeling this, as a professor... You sort of start to lose touch with the cutting edge anymore.
Yeah,
it's
you're not reading the literature as it comes out.
You're not like keeping up to date quite as much. And so, like the PhD student is the one who's like reading all the current literature and like super up to date because like, oh my god, I have to pass this thing and write this dissertation. Yeah. And so, and like I said, and I think, and mentors PIs tend to kind of like be working on multiple projects and things. They're experts on that. I'm not taking that away. But also they
should in a certain sense be surpassed by their students. That's kind of the point.
That's sort of the point. Yeah. And again, like they'll have this like broad scope, right? And they'll ask really good questions, right? That kind of spur you on. Like that, a good mentor will do that. But ultimately, like your dissertation, like you made the figures, you put together the data, like you wrote it down, you know more about that thing, whatever it is, than anybody else. And like I said, so your mentor will know a lot about it, and a good mentor will ask very incisive questions that will maybe make you, will push you to be that world expert on whatever that thing is. But in the end, in the end, you wrote your dissertation. You know more about it than anybody else.
Yeah, great answer. Yeah. We've been going for an hour and 18 minutes so far. How are you feeling?
I'm good, but we can go ahead and think about wrapping things up. I don't know what we got going on.
We're kind of monopolizing camp right now. Everybody else is hanging out behind the trailer, so we're probably thinking about wrapping up before too long. Yeah, but if you in the chat have got any pressing questions, do not hesitate with those. But yeah, MJ Build says, glad to see you back in the field. Hey, thanks. It's good to be back out in the field. Yeah. Yeah. Any favorite field spots that you've been to? I know you've done a lot of work in the Cedar Mountain Formation. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any highlights or anything like that?
I mean, this is great. I always love.
It's really nice being here. Yeah.
I always love camp with Jim and Dawn. Like
Yeah.
they run a good camp, and it's always nice. South Africa was really nice.
That must have been really cool.
Yeah, it was a cool place to go in general, and we got to kind of go through a bunch of different like game parks and stuff like that, and I saw elephants and all this stuff, and that was super fun. But also just the field locality where we happen to be, it's basically, there's not a whole lot. It's in this place called the Kirkwood Formation. It's early Cretaceous in South Africa. South Africa's really known for its Permian and Triassic stuff.
Yeah, the Karoo,
which is a lot older.
Yeah.
But it has this little like band of outcrop of Cretaceous stuff around like this one valley, in like kind of the southernmost part, and it's just like this like valley, and the whole floor of the valley is all orange groves. So there's just orange trees everywhere.
Nice.
And then you just like go up on the valley wall, and there's like this little strip of outcrop. So it's kind of cliffy. It's a little,
that sounds really pretty.
You gotta watch your step, but yeah, it's just like gorgeous. And then there's just this like river valley in the bottom, like surrounded by orange groves, and we were just staying in like, this orange farmer's like guest house, because there's not really, you can't really camp, right? Like, there's actual like active agriculture going on. But he was just like, oh yeah, just pick whatever oranges you want. These are the good ones for juice. These are the good ones for like eating, and like, so we ate our weight in oranges, and
nice. No scurvy that feels good.
No, none at all. And like stayed in a nice little cottage, so we got to like get cleaned up every day and all that. So it was great.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's a standout.
That's a good one. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe before we think about wrapping up, any advice for aspiring paleontologists? Because I always like to say there are as many different ways to be a paleontologist as there are different paleontologists.
Yeah,
almost.
I mean there really are, right?
Yeah.
Even sort of within the realm that I know best of academic paleontology, like I teach anatomy. There are people who teach geology. There are people who teach sort of general biology. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of different paths you can go down, and I think my advice is sort of figure out what that lane is for you, and like sometimes you might have a couple options open. I wasn't like always set on like I'm going to teach human anatomy, but I got a postdoc doing that, and that's kind of then been my path, and I enjoy it. But
it seems like you're good at it too. Like,
yeah.
From what you've told me, it seems like it worked really well for you.
Yeah. No, I really enjoy it, and so but I guess as a student, kind of we might have storms rolling in here, but kind of test those things out. Find you may not know what path to take yet, but try some things out and see what you like. You might. If you get a chance to take human anatomy, you might do it and be like, oh my god, I hate this. Then don't follow me, okay? Don't do that. But, but ask people about what their different paths are, sort of see what the different options are, and try out as many of them as you get an opportunity to, and find what your pathway is within that. And like I said, and you might have a couple different ideas, and then you just sort of, then it's up to fate and like which job callbacks you get, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, before I follow up on that, another good question that I don't want to leave by the wayside. From the Mayor of Space, what XKCD comic strip do you have printed out and pinned up in your office? Because every scientist has one.
I don't actually have one pinned up.
No?
But yeah, I mean, my favorite one is the person missing a math question on the math board. Like you're bad at math. Person with the ponytail answering a math question wrong. Oh, girls are bad at math. Yeah. That was a little bit of a downer to hang up in my office, I guess, but it's the first one that came to mind, so there you go.
I like that one. Yeah. There's one too that it actually featured Denver Fowler's work on predatory ecology of Deinonychus, like the stability flapping thing.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite. But
that's a good one.
There's a good number of dinosaur ones, actually. And then, so to kind of follow up on the becoming a paleontologist thing, for any younger viewers who are watching, maybe like, high school age or thinking about going to college, or going to university if you're from a Commonwealth country, you know. What's some advice that you would give to younger people thinking about going into a career in the sciences, especially paleontology? Like, what tips or tricks could you give them for that kind of thing?
I mean, first off, I'd say, you know, take all the geology and sort of organismal biology, anatomy kind of stuff you can. Mm-hmm. Take all the statistics and computer programming that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wish I were better at programming. I'm okay at statistics. But yeah, you know, because all of those things are going to be really core. And if you're good at stats, like, oh my God, you can do anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, make sure that you're good at those. But also, like, just read a lot and write a lot. Reading and writing are fundamental to everything that we do in sciences.
Yep.
Communication is so important. And, you know, and especially if you're into art, like, practice that. And if you're not into art, practice sketching things anyway.
Yeah.
You know, just little, we make maps and we make little sketches of the bones in the maps that we do here. So, you know, even just some really basic art, even if you don't think you're ever going to, like, publish it, just for your own notes, like, that stuff's awesome. So practice doodling, practice sketching things. All of that is going to come in handy.
Yeah. You also said that you volunteered at the Mesa Southwest Museum. Mm-hmm. I've got kind of a similar story. That's how I first actually, like, got involved with paleo, was volunteering at a museum in Berkeley.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that opened up so many doors for me.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
That changed my life. So that's
you know, not everyone is lucky enough to have that option, but if you have a local museum, even if it's not like a natural history museum, even if it's sort of like, you know,
local history or like
something like that,
you'll build connections there that you'd be surprised by.
You will. So and any kind of museum-y experience can still sort of apply.
For sure.
Even if it's not paleo.
Yeah. If you end up moving to a place where there is a natural history museum, you know, you could say, hey, I've worked in a museum setting before. Mm-hmm. You know, they're much more likely to let you in. So, anyway, one last question.
Yeah.
How do you think dinosaur paleontology might evolve in the future?
Ooh.
Ethan's zooming over the camera right now.
Yeah. I mean, it's already evolving in a lot of ways. You know, we use a lot more tech now than we used to. I mean, we're very low tech out here in the field. Yeah,
we say as we're broadcasting live via satellite internet. But
but
that's the most off the wall technology we have here in camp. Yeah,
and we would be doing just fine in the quarry without any of that setup. You know?
Yeah.
So, but you know, a lot of what I do is kind of getting CT scans of specimens and using computer programs to make 3D models of these things so we can get a better look at the anatomy, and a lot of sort of, I don't know, we can do a lot of sort of functional analysis and with computers. I mean, all the phylogeny I do is very, you know, it's all very like techy, honestly, in the end. A lot of it. And so we are kind of moving forward on that front. But in terms of what's waiting out there in the future, I mean, man, I don't even know. I'm excited to see, but I honestly don't have a great answer there. Other than, you know, we're always kind of moving forward and incorporating new tech and new ideas. And I don't know what the future holds, and that's the most fun part. Yeah.
Hopefully we start to gain a better understanding of the evolution of dinosaurs, you know, throughout these different geological formations. Like the Cedar Mountain Formation, basically unstudied until what, like the early 2000s? Or
like 20 years ago?
I know,
like 20 years ago, nobody knew what the Cedar Mountain Formation was.
And now, it's like half of the dinosaurs from Utah have been named from the Cedar Mountain Formation. It's just this... Yeah, and who knows how many other, you know, new frontiers there are like that, still waiting to be discovered. So
and you never. Sometimes just somebody finds a new fossil and it changes everything, and you never know when that's going to happen.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe it'll be tomorrow on stream. We'll see. Anyway, thank you so much,
If only we could be so
Karen.
lucky.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Danny.